The world of cryptocurrency was supposed to be protected by codes, passwords, and complex digital locks. But what happened to Peter Vuong in Sydney shows how those protections can mean nothing when criminals decide to go after the person instead of the technology. In recent years, cybercrime has shifted in a terrifying direction. Instead of hacking computers, criminals are now using brute force abductions, threats, and torture to get access to digital wealth. This type of crime is often called a wrench attack, where no amount of encryption matters because the victim is physically forced to hand everything over. Peter Vuong's kidnapping in March 2023 became one of the clearest and most disturbing examples of this new kind of crime. What unfolded wasn't just a kidnapping, it was a carefully planned operation that exposed serious security failures, insider leaks, and a growing global trend where digital money meets real-world violence. The Smithfield break-in, where it all began. For most people, home is the one place they feel safest. For Peter Vuong, that sense of safety was shattered before sunrise on March 9th, 2023. At around 5:20 in the morning, when the streets were quiet and most people were asleep, a group of armed men stormed a house in Smithfield. In Sydney's Greater West, the timing wasn't random. It was chosen to catch everyone off guard and avoid attention. These men weren't there to steal cash or electronics. They came for one person. In their eyes, Peter Vuong was the key to a fortune locked away in CRY at just 26 years old. Vuong was dragged from the house and forced into a waiting car. The entire kidnapping happened so quickly that by the time officers from Fairfield City Police Area Command arrived, the attackers were long gone. The scene was already cold. For investigators, this raised an uncomfortable truth. There were no early warning systems, no reinforced barriers, nothing that could have slowed the attackers down or bought time for police to respond. Strike force quota is formed given the seriousness of the crime and the signs that organized criminals were involved. The NSW police force escalated the response immediately. The State Crime Command brought in the Robbery and Serious Crime Squad and formed a dedicated team, known as Strike Force Quo. Their mission was clear: find Peter Vuong alive and dismantle the network behind the kidnapping. But the task was anything but simple. The kidnappers were using encrypted communication platforms, carefully hiding their movements and plans. Every hour that passed increased the danger to Vuong's life. 6 days of horror in Belmore for nearly a week. Peter Vuong was held captive inside an ordinary-looking house in Belmore, about 15 kilometers from where he was taken. From the outside, the place looked unremarkable. Inside, it was a torture chamber. Investigators later revealed that Vuong was kept bound the entire time. His captors weren't relying on threats alone. They carried out a calculated campaign of violence, meant to terrify him and pressure his associates into paying a massive ransom. The brutality was extreme, even by underworld standards in New South Wales. Police allege that the kidnappers used a gun not just as a threat, but as a tool of torture. A pistol was repeatedly shoved into Vuong's mouth, smashing and loosening his teeth. Once damaged, the teeth were ripped out with pliers. This wasn't random cruelty, it sent a clear message. The attackers wanted to show they were willing to permanently disfigure or worse if their demands weren't met. It was violence designed to break both the victim and anyone watching from the outside. Peter Vuong's ordeal exposed a chilling reality in this new era of crime. Digital wealth doesn't just attract hackers, it attracts kidnappers willing to use unimaginable violence to get what they want. Kidnappers didn't rely on pain alone. They understood Ferrand. They used it deliberately. When tactical officers later searched the house where Peter Vuong was held, they found sledgehammers inside. These weren't random tools. In crimes like this, sledgehammers send a clear message. They promise bone-breaking violence without the noise or finality of a gunshot. Quiet, brutal, personal at the same time. The kidnappers were running a psychological operation from behind encrypted phones. They sent proof-of-life messages that doubled as proof of torture graphic evidence that Vuong was alive. But suffering. Those messages were sent to Tran Din, a family friend and known crypto trader. One message, later recovered by police, left no room for negotiation. We cut your boy up bit by bit until you give us what we want. You have 24 hours to cough up something nice. The threat was calculated. It wasn't about logic or bargaining. It was meant to push Vuong's family and associates into panic where fear overrides reason, and paying the ransom feels like the only way to keep him alive. The $5 million crypto demand this. Kidnapping had one goal: money. The amount was specific: $5 million. Australian dollars? In a traditional ransom case, that kind of money creates serious problems. Cash is heavy. It's traceable. Moving it requires physical handovers, marked bills, cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency changes all of that. $5 million in crypto can be transferred in seconds. No suitcases, no exchange point, no physical trail. Once it's sent, it's gone. Investigators believe the kidnappers zeroed in on Tran Dinh because they saw him as the gatekeeper of the group's digital wealthy person, most capable of moving that kind of money fast. As a crypto trader, Dinh fit the profile of a new kind of high-value target, someone whose wealth exists almost entirely online. The kidnappers clearly understood how crypto works. They knew that once a transaction is signed with a private key, it can't be reversed. There's no undo button. Without help from exchanges or law enforcement, recovery is nearly impossible. Strikeforce, QOA, uncovered evidence that someone inside, Service NSW, a government agency trusted with sensitive personal data, had allegedly helped the criminals. Her name was Sira El-Khair, just 21 years old. She was arrested on April 12, 2023. And the news sent shockwaves through the state. The case exposed a harsh reality. Even the strongest systems can fail when the threat comes from inside, turning government data into a weapon, police allege. El-Khair used her work access to log into the traffic for NSW database and pull personal information linked to Tran Dinh and his family. The timing was chilling. This data access happened on March 10, 2023, around 11 hours after Peter Vuong had already been kidnapped. Investigators believe the criminals needed more leverage, more pressure, more control. Charges laid against Sira El-Khair went far beyond a simple data breach. Police accused her of serious crimes, including kidnapping with intent to demand ransom and unauthorized access to protected computer systems. At the heart of those charges was something deeper: complete betrayal of public trust. Under New South Wales law, taking part in a criminal group can carry a sentence of up to 5 years in prison. But this case raised an even more uncomfortable question. How could a 21-year-old government employee end up feeding sensitive information to a violent kidnapping ring? Investigators say the answer points to a major weakness in the system. One login, one person. That was all it took. In security terms, this is known as the insider threat. And in the age of crypto wealth, it's becoming one of the most dangerous vulnerabilities of all. Low-level staff at banks, government offices, and even crypto platforms now hold quiet power. If criminals can pressure, bribe, or manipulate just one employee with access, they can walk straight past millions of dollars worth of digital security. The rescue, a race against time. Peter Vuong's ordeal finally came to an end through a fast-moving, high-risk police operation. After days of surveillance, intelligence gathering, and old-fashioned detective work, Strikeforce QOA narrowed in on the house in Belmore where Vuong was being held. On March 14, 2023, NSW police tactical officers launched a carefully planned rescue mission. Everything depended on surprise. Flash grenades, also known as distraction devices, were used to disorient the kidnappers the moment officers stormed the property. The operation had been kept tightly under wraps until the last possible second. Driven by fears that the captors were armed and willing to kill, when police entered the house, they found Peter Vuong alive. 6 men were arrested on the spot. All of them were between 19 and 21 years old. Who the police say was responsible, the ages of the suspects immediately stood out. Those arrested: Viliami Sayaso, Valali Tonga, Sunia, Sayesa, John Tato, Fahimokioa, Lolo Liava, and Kichuo Tatafu were young, but police say they were deeply involved in extreme violence. Investigators believe this group reflects a new kind of criminal workforce, digitally connected, ruthless, and willing to take on higher-risk jobs for massive payouts. In this case, that job was $5 million Australian dollars kidnapping. In 2021, hardware wallet company Ledger suffered a major data breach that exposed customer names and home addresses. That leaked data became a roadmap for criminals worldwide. The danger became horrifyingly real in January 2025, when David Balland, a co-founder of Ledger, was kidnapped. As proof that the threat was real, his captors severed one of his fingers, sent it as a ransom message. The parallels are chilling. Just like the teeth ripped from Peter Vuong's mouth, the mutilation served a purpose. It was a bloody calling card designed to show there was no bluff, no delay, and no escape without payment. In this new world of crime, digital wealth no longer just attracts hackers. It attracts people willing to use violence as leverage, human suffering as proof. Criminal groups now operate with disturbing professionalism. Investigators say their methods often include open-source intelligence, tracking social media posts showing luxury cars, watches, or crypto events, social engineering, posing as rideshare drivers or using dating apps to isolate victims inside corruption, paying or pressuring employees at agencies like Service NSW or even crypto platforms to leak addresses, rethinking safety. After Vuong, what Peter Vuong went through has forced the crypto world to ask a different question. It's no longer just, how do I protect my keys from hackers? It's now, how do I protect myself and my family from kidnappers? The rise of physical crypto security, a new kind of security industry, is emerging. One focus not on screens, but on people. Firms like BlackCloak and Solace Global now offer protection services, specifically for high-value crypto holders. Their focus is physical safety, privacy, making targets harder to find. Some of their strategies include erasing digital footprints, removing personal records from public databases, signature wallets with location limits, where keys are spread across different countries. The legal fallout from the Vuong case has already influenced Australian law. In November 2023, the NSW Parliament amended laws regarding criminal groups to ensure that peripheral participants, those who provide information but do not participate in the violence, can be prosecuted with equal vigor. This is a direct response to the LCAO. The Vuong case changed the law. What happened to Peter Vuong didn't end with arrests. It reached all the way into Parliament. In November 2023, the NSW Parliament changed the law around criminal groups. The update made it clear that people on the edges of these crimes, the ones who provide information but never lay a hand on the victim, can now be prosecuted just as seriously as the attackers. This shift was a direct response to what investigators called the LCAO vulnerability. It sent a blunt warning to government employees. Access to personal data isn't just a job perk. In the wrong hands, it can decide who lives and who dies. Outlook, a growing target on middle class, is that only millionaires are at risk of wrench attacks. However, data from 2024 suggests that criminals are increasingly targeting individuals with middle-class savings, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. For a street gang in Sydney or a cartel in South America, a $40,000 crypto transfer is a high reward score, with much lower risk than attacking a high-profile CEO who has private security. As cryptocurrency becomes more mainstream, the attack surface for physical crime grows. Every person who pays for coffee with a crypto-linked card or mentions their portfolio at a pub becomes a potential data point for a criminal network. The transition from a pseudonymous online trader to a target in a Belmore safe house is shorter than most realize.